Magenta blue. The color is calm, ocean water, happy skies, and the only color I'll be painting with today. Today, I'm painting with over 420 blue watercolors. Literally every blue watercolor paint I own. And I'm challenging myself to create some sort of art that's full of depth and life, even though I only have one color to work with. Now listen, most of the art marker colored pencil YouTubers, they've done this challenge already. So I'm definitely feeling the pressure because watercolor is a bit scarier when it comes to this type of art challenge. Because all the water, the control and more predictability that you get with other types of mediums, you don't get here. You gotta surrender to the craziness of watercolor. As a watercolor artist doing a one-color art challenge, I got a little bit more of the challenge on my plate. And let me explain why. Friends, when you add water to pigment, things get a whole lot more unpredictable. So on top of the fact that I only have one color to make everything look awesome, I got water in the mix. So, and then the other reason this is super challenging is because look at these pans of color. Now, just by looking, you can't really tell. Is it lighter? Does it have a lot of pigment? Is it going to build up the color easily? So guess what? I had to sort and swatch all of my 420, blue watercolors before I could even start panning this painting. You gotta see this. Now, the one decision that wasn't difficult was choosing my brushes, and you guessed it, I went with a blue theme. Now, before I got into any of the fun stuff, I had to literally go on a hunt. I had to search down all of my blue watercolors, and that's a little tricky because my art supplies live under two roofs. I've been collecting watercolors for the better part of the last 20 years, and my collection is embarrassing to say the least. And so when I started yanking the sweet little half pans from their snug little palettes, I knew I was in for it. And when I say I'm using all of my blues, that's right. There's probably going to be 15 different cerulean blues and 25 different French ultramarines. Who knows? Now that I've gotten all of the paints from my home studio, I'm gonna head to my other studio. This is my other business. We design wedding invitations, and there is a ton of stuff up there. Some of it's really old, but still totally good. Some of it is things that we've been sent that we've really never used, and yeah, it's all getting used now. Once all the colors were found, getting to the sorting of them all was important. And at this stage, I'm starting to think about the finished painting. I am starting to plan in my head. I took a bunch of polls on Instagram of what folks wanted me to paint for this challenge. I'm known for flowers, and of course I put out two options, flowers and Italianesque inspired tiles. And you guessed it, Italian tiles won by a flipping landslide. I am done for. Flowers would have been so much easier, but I had to open my big mouth. So I went to my iPad and I gave myself a little break. I used the mirror effect to create some fun tiles, and I was able to do it in not a ton of time. First up, I'm grabbing all of the super light colors. Many of these are mixed with white, and you can tell at first glance. I think these are going to be the best for the first layer. And let me tell you what, friends, I'm also a rule breaker. So the fact that I've decided to kind of actually follow the rules of watercolor painting has me shook. So yeah, I'm going to use these more whitish blues for the first layers because they are the lightest, and to get a kind of solid start on a classic watercolor painting, you start light. Next up, I think these cerulean-like blues are going to become the next darkest color that I'm going to use after the lightest, whitest blue colors. Then we've got the French ultramarine-ish family. And these metallics and the grayish blues, they feel really scary right now. I have no idea how they're going to come into play. Oh, we shall see. Now, I've got to know at this point, what do you think is going to be my biggest challenge with this painting? I mean, is it going to be choosing which blue and when? Is it going to be making it look kind of full of depth and preventing it from looking flat? Head in the comments and let me know what you think I'm going to struggle with. I'm curious. Okay, and I gotta be honest, what I'm most excited about, at least in this sorting phase, are these indigo-like colors. The colors that are super intense And when you layer and layer and layer them, they get really, really, really dark, but don't look black. This batch of color is going to be my saving grace. These are going to be what I use at the end to kind of fix any kind of visual boo-boos or shortcomings and make everything just pop. I sound really confident, don't I? Yeah. Let's see how this goes. Now, I have watched a lot of one color art challenges, and I've seen a lot of folks swatch out their colored pencils before they dive in, and that's how they make their final selections. I've also seen a lot of artists just kind of visually winging it. And despite originally thinking that I would gleefully wing it here, I realized quickly that that just wasn't possible to get the best result. I mentioned earlier that this process felt like it would be more difficult for a watercolor artist versus, say, a marker artist or a colored pencil artist. And so far, I'm standing by that. And here's why. There's actually 3 words to explain why. Tinting strength and opacity. Mini art lesson coming your way. Here's a way to think about tinting strength. It's basically like how easily and how quickly could you take a particular blue paint formulation and tint a white paint to make it become blue. If you can do it quickly and it gets the white bold really fast, that blue that you started with has a high tinting strength. Now, opacity is how see-through a color is when it's painted on the paper. Traditionally, watercolors aren't thought of as being opaque or not very see-through. But actually, there are a ton of paint formulations and naturally occurring pigments that are just naturally very opaque. Think of it like mixing milk with your watercolor, and that's a more opaque paint formulation. These 2 factors really mess things up because I could have 2 colors being called cerulean by 2 different manufacturers, and one could have a really low tinting strength depending on the formulation, where the other could be more opaque and be more intense, but they've got the same name. So which pile am I going to put which into what? Into, oh my gosh, you see what I mean? Got to talk about value. And this is how I am making my selections as I work through this painting. Because a monochromatic, that is what we're doing here. A color scheme where you're using shades and tints of one color. So think about adding white to blue or adding black to blue. That's basically what we're doing here with all of these 400 plus versions of blue. It's tricky because value, we need to pay attention to value. Okay, so value is how light or dark something is, and contrast is the difference between the lightest color on the page and the darkest. Contrast gives a painting depth and life. So yeah, I gotta pay attention to the value, or else this thing is gonna look flat and boring and you are not gonna wanna watch and listen to me anymore, and I don't want that, so yeah, let's do this. Some things I promised myself while planning the art for this challenge. Number 1, I wanted to make sure that the shapes on the final piece were large enough, so I had room to get all watercolory. Honestly, I still think the shapes are too small. And number 2, I didn't want to overwhelm myself by painting a large piece. This one landed at over a foot square. Yeah. And number 3, I wanted to make sure I was painting in good natural light. So my perception of color and value was at its most clean and accurate. Now this one was a non-negotiable. When the sun started shifting down low in the sky each day I worked on this, I stopped painting. I may have started with the lightest colors that had white mixed into the formulation of the paint, but I'm also going to end there, but just using a much more intense version. So in the beginning, it was a lot less paint, a lot more water. And at the end here, to make everything just pop, it's going to be the exact opposite. This challenge was nothing short of exhausting. I'm not going to lie. It took weeks, not because I was actually physically working on it for weeks, but because I had to psych myself up to get back to it. The sorting, the organizing, the swatching, all incredibly necessary, but all a little overwhelming. Now, when I got to developing the artwork and working on these tile patterns and smashing it all together in Photoshop, and then I finally got to paint, it all felt unbelievably worth it. I was really nervous, though, about keeping things very punchy, making sure that there was a lot of contrast, a lot of difference between the highs and lows or the lights and darks on the page. And I'm pretty happy with the result. I don't know. What do you think? It doesn't look flat, does it? I may have only had one color to work with, and I also had a lot of duplicates, a lot of ceruleans and French ultramarines and phalos and, well, you get it. But it was really cool to be reminded of how different each manufacturer is when it comes to the paint formulation of the exact same color, or at least color name, of another manufacturer. And it reminded me of how cathartic and meditative it can be to do a repetitive task, even if it's not just painting. I think all of the strategizing I did really paid off here. The type of strategizing and planning I don't normally do. I mean, let's face it, friends, I'm a free-spirited, joy-driven painter. Now I gotta know, let me know, do you think I should do this again? And if so, which color? I'm thinking pink, but you tell me. I've talked a lot about value in this video, and if you want to know more about what that means when it comes to watercolor, this is the video you want to watch next, because it's going to teach you a ton about how to change the value in your paintings using your watercolor paints and just water. And until next time, don't stay blue, just keep happy painting. Oh gosh. Okay, bye.